In this week's In-Ear Insights, July 1st, 2023 is going to be a big day for a lot of marketers because it is the day that Google Analytics 3, also known as Universal Analytics, the web analytics software that 90+% of the web uses, will stop working. Google has said that they will be sunsetting it and that Universal Analytics accounts will no longer collect data as of that date. And then we will have access to the legacy data for another 6 months. And then after that, it's a big question mark as to whether we'll even have access to our old data. So in today's episode, we want to talk through the people side of things, because as we've talked about in previous episodes of the podcast, the technology and the processes, there's a lot of focus on that. In this week's live stream, we're actually going to do a live Google Analytics for migration. So we've got the platform of people process platform pretty well covered. But the challenge that I'm seeing and hearing is the people in our Slack group, Analytics for Marketers, as well as other Slack groups. We're hearing people saying, I don't know how I'm going to train myself, my team, get up to speed with everything else that's going on right now, and do it in time. Google didn't give us enough time, et cetera, even though the product's been out in the market for 18 months. So, Katie, when you hear that Google has essentially imposed this arbitrary date some 15 months in the future, and whether we like it or not, we're going to do it. What's your answer to all the people who are saying, hey, we just don't have the people to do this?
Well, I would say first and foremost, if you want to go ahead and have like a mini panic attack. Go ahead, have it, feel your feelings, don't ball it up. Like I was writing the newsletter, and one of the things I'd mentioned was I am not the most technical person. And so I'm grateful, Chris, that I have someone like you on my team. So that, no, in all seriousness, when announcements like this happen, I personally don't need to panic as much as someone who doesn't have a Chris Penn level skill set on their team, because I would otherwise, in previous roles, I would be panicking because I know my way around Google Analytics. I'm familiar with Google Analytics 3, very familiar. I'm modestly familiar with Tag Manager, and then I feel pretty confident with Data Studio. So I have a decent enough skill set to get somebody set up and running with Google Analytics 3. With Google Analytics 4, I know, having worked with you on audits and setups and migrations, like it's a whole different world, and it really is a developer's software. It's no longer just sort of the drag and drop, super easy, intuitive. It's none of that exists. And so the answer that I have is go ahead and panic. That's fine. But then once you get the panicking out of the way, we need to take a step back and go, okay, we have to figure out what we're going to do about getting our people trained. We talked about this a few weeks ago, Chris, with general life cycles and why life cycles don't include people. That's the part that's always skipped over. And then so you're left with this thing that nobody knows how to execute because it wasn't factored into the plan. So here's the good news. You have time to factor people into the plan. So I would say, as of, the second you hear this podcast, the second you see the news about Google, start making the plan for getting somebody on your team trained up, whether it's you or somebody else, or you bring in a contractor. Nominate your champion, basically, this person who is going to learn Google Analytics 4 inside out, because that needs to happen in order to set yourself up for success. So that's where I would start, is figuring out what skills you have on the team currently and what you need. So one of the things we know about Google Analytics 3 to 4 is that both systems rely on Tag Manager. Both systems want you to be using Data Studio as the reporting interface. So if there's a comfort level with Tag Manager and Data Studio, you're already a good chunk of the way there.
Okay. One of the things that's happened here that's going to be difficult, even for people who are familiar with Data Studio, is understanding that the architecture of GA4 is so different that even like your existing Data Studio dashboards will not work as is. You have to rebuild them. And the metrics have changed, which is something of an interesting challenge. I'll give you an example. In GA3, we're used to seeing source medium, right? What's the source of this session or this user, etc. And there's three of them now in GA4. There's first user source, there's session source, and there's conversion source. And it's not really well documented anywhere which one to use and when. How do you, for people who are saying, okay, cool, we're going to skill up our team on this, what's the approach? Because people are going to jump in saying, okay, I think I know Data Studio. I'm going to go in there, and then you're presented with your 210 dimensions and metrics, which, by the way, is missing 300 of them because there's 520 of them in GA3. They're going to go and say, okay, I'm ready to start rebuilding my reports, and then just run face first into what do we do here?
Well, like any good project, I would recommend you start with your user stories and, business requirements. And so, for some people, they're going to be building brand new Data Studio dashboards because they're like, oh, I've never had to do this before. I've always just looked at the data inside Google Analytics 3, which is fine, but it's not available to you in Google Analytics 4. So you have to be using Data Studio. So I would start with your user story. So, the basic structure of the user story is, as a person, I want to take an action so that I can get an outcome. And so, a simple one is, as a marketing manager, I want to know how many people are visiting my website so that I can see that my campaigns are successful. Or as a marketing manager, I want to know where people are coming from when they come to my website so that I can resource my campaigns appropriately. So those are some pretty common user stories. So that's how you would start to build out your dashboard. So now that you know the purpose of your dashboard with your user story, you can start to go into the more details of, like, what metrics do I need? I probably need source and medium. I probably need number of sessions to my website. I probably need date controls. And so you can go down the list of the actual requirements that you need in order to build a dashboard. And so that's where I would start to keep everything organized, to see, do I even have my system set up correctly to be able to answer this question?
That makes a lot of sense. The one thing that I think is going to be problematic for a few folks is the fact that if we think of this like a kitchen, right? You know what the menu is. The user story is essentially, in some ways, the recipe, right? It's how you're going to get to the outcome that you want once you decide what the outcomes are. The appliances are different because GA4 is a different beast. The people are the same, but the ingredients now are different, right? Again, the difference between a source, medium, and GA3, and then first user source, session source, and conversion source in GA4.
Mhm.
When the ingredients change, how much time do people need to invest in getting to understand, like, oh yeah, we don't use wheat anymore. Now we're using tapioca for everything, and having to understand like what tapioca does, for example. So in the GA4 example, you've got 60% of the dimensions and metrics are probably new, even if they share similar names to what's in GA3, they function differently.
Well, this goes into the, nominating, or, finding someone who can train up and really understand the new Google Analytics 4 in depth. And so one of the biggest differences that I've learned from listening to you speak about it, Chris, is that in Google Analytics 4, you cannot edit the channel groupings. So the reason why this is important is because in Google Analytics 3, out of the box, the channel groupings, the email, social, direct, those things are not set up correctly, such that Google cannot recognize its own Gmail system as email. It comes in as direct traffic or unknown. And so in Google Analytics 3, we can take some steps to correct this in the settings. In Google Analytics 4, that setting does not exist. So whether or not they're going to roll it out, they haven't said. This means that there needs to be a whole new training around governance around UTM codes. UTM codes are going to be the way in which you can determine source and medium in Google Analytics 4. So it's something you should have been doing for Google Analytics 3, but if you haven't and you've been relying on the system settings, now it becomes even more important as you're trying to fight for your budget to say, my social media campaign is actually working. Well, guess what? In Google Analytics 4, unless it's tagged correctly, nobody's going to know. And then when you bring those metrics into Data Studio, that's where you're really going to see nothing's tagged correctly.
Yep. Yeah. The governance issues, I think, are going to bite a lot of people very hard because
Mhm.
it is less flexible, it is
Yeah.
less accommodating. Google has said, "Here's the way to do it," and if you want the product to work as designed, you got to do it this way, which is again not entirely unreasonable because the vast majority of us are not paying for this, so you do
Mhm.
get what you pay for. But it is challenging for people who want to even be able to do apples to apples comparisons with GA3. Like if you look at the two systems, you're gonna get different numbers because the way things are measured and delineated are different. GA4 is based entirely on events, and Google aggregates and rolls up events together to form things like sessions, for example. As a result, you could look at GA3 and GA4 for the exact same website, and you're going to see different numbers, even on basic things like how many visitors did you have today? They will actually be different numbers sometimes.
And so, one of the things that we're recommending for teams to be doing right now, if they haven't already done it, is to at the very least stand up a Google Analytics 4 instance, even if it's not 100% configured with goals and all of those things. You can start to be collecting your Google Analytics 3 and your Google Analytics 4 data in parallel so that you're seeing the delta between the two systems and working now instead of 15 months from now to correct those when it's too late.
Especially if you need historical data, because when you
Mhm.
move to GA4, your data doesn't go with you.
So, Chris, uh, this is something I probably could have looked it up myself, but I haven't yet. No, in all seriousness, it's something I've been curious about. How long has Google Analytics Universal, Google Analytics 3, been around? So, how many years could some companies have in historical data that they're about to lose?
Since 2006,
So that is what, 20, 10, 15, I don't know, math.
16
It's a
years.
it's a lot of years.
Yes.
So
Like my
6
personal website's data goes back to 2007.
Okay, so using your personal website as the example, you have 15 years of historical data. You can do really deep dives in your data of the analysis and whatever you want to do. As of July 1st, 2023, unless you have exported all of that data somewhere into a SQL, BigQuery table, God forbid it's in, 15 years of data is in an Excel spreadsheet, but hey, maybe you don't get a lot of traffic, so it's not a big deal. We don't know. Unless you have actively taken that data out of the system, you're basically going to be up a creek without a paddle because Google's going to say, okay, bye bye, historical data. Now, so that's a correct statement, right?
That is a correct statement. Google has said they will warrant for you will have access to GA3 data, your old data, for at least 6 months after the shutoff date. They said they will announce, what the final cutoff period will be for the historical data. But in the technical documentation, they do say we strongly recommend exporting all of your raw data. They also don't tell you how
Well, of
to
course,
do that.
yeah. The question I would then have, and I don't know if this is something that they've considered or that you've considered, is can you import the data back into Google Analytics 4 so you then have that complete data set? Or is it basically saying, like, okay, if you've set up a BigQuery table, which is what we at Google Analytics 4 want you to do, you can take your Google Analytics 3 data, import it into BigQuery, and then start pushing all of your Google Analytics 4 data into BigQuery. And then maybe, if you're lucky, if all the metrics match up, you could have a complete data set.
You can't, unfortunately, because the schema for the GA4 data is totally different than for GA3. Like, again, GA4 is based on the event model. So every single row and entry in there is event based, whereas GA3 is sort of hit based. They're very, very different. Structurally, the data itself is very different. One of the things we were discussing this morning on Analytics for Marketers was that there will probably be a small cottage industry of people building an exporter that can take Google Analytics 3 data and push it to an open source package like Matomo, because Matomo just has a MySQL database on the back end. So if you were able to get all your data out of GA3, format it correctly for Matomo, you could then essentially load it into the MySQL table there, and then the Matomo interface would allow you to essentially view your historical data as it was current. Well, it's one of the other reasons why you know, we've been saying now for probably almost 2 years, you should have a backup analytics system running alongside. It's like, again, at Trust Insights, we've been using Matomo on our site for 2 years now, I think. And even though we hardly ever check it, other than, I check it once a month to make sure it's still there. It's there and it will provide that continuity in case I don't feel like exporting our old GA data.
But this goes back to the original question of the people.
Hmm.
So you and I have both been talking about all of these different processes that you can follow to get your data to do the thing. That's all well and good if you know how to do that. If you know
Right.
how to export your data into a SQL system and re-import it into a Matomo, if you even know how to set up a Matomo, if you even were aware that that was a thing that existed. So this still comes back to, what do you do about the people on your team who are panicking right now, who are super reliant on this data to make decisions, to demonstrate, effectiveness of their jobs, their campaigns, to stakeholders, board members, customers, whoever. And so the
I guess
advice,
I would ask
go
you, pretend I didn't work here. What would you do?
ahead. Well, when I was
Put
done
the
crying in a
panic.
corner, yeah, after I'm done panicking and crying in the corner, the first thing I would do is basically an audit. Not so much an audit of the systems, but an audit of the business in terms of who's reliant on Google Analytics data right now. What is it being used for? So that I have a good understanding of all the people and the teams who are going to be impacted by this change. So I would start there. Now, the nice thing is that for Trust Insights, that's you and me. So it's a pretty short audit. I could probably do it on the back of a post it or something. But for larger enterprise companies, like some of our clients, that's a bigger ask because there's so many different moving pieces that once a report gets created, they don't necessarily have a clean trail of how many people have seen it, how many people are reliant on it, how many different decisions are being made by it. So that's where you need to start is number one, you need to understand who is using the data and for what purposes and what specific data is being used. So that's number one, is sort of the ecosystem of the data itself. Then you can start to go through, if you need to go through report by report, team by team, and say, does this still hold? Do you still need all of this data? Do you need different data? So you start to go through that requirements gathering with each team for each report to understand what's changed. Is this new? Is this different? Or has nobody looked at this report in 6 years, but for some reason we're still generating it? So that's the advice that I would give to myself in terms of, here's where I would start. One of the reasons I like to start there, not only from just an understanding everything, is that it's something I have control over. And so for those of us who are, higher anxiety, you need to find those places that you have a little bit of control over situations that are really out of your control. And this is one where you can say, okay, if I can collect all the information to say, I understand all the pieces of this puzzle, I might not know how they all fit together, but I at least understand all the pieces of it.
Gotcha. One thing that, as you were talking, that occurred to me is that there's also interesting market opportunity here for marketing automation systems because they also collect web analytics data, right? When you deploy HubSpot or Marketo or Pardot or any of these things, that you do have a widget that goes on your website. So from a continuity perspective, if you're doing apples to apples, those might become the systems of record. Now, if you know that you can't carry over your historical data, that might be the easiest way for companies to sort of get a single source of truth, even if they lack things like attribution modeling and stuff. Just for, hey, how many visitors do we have in 2016? If the data is in your marketing automation system, it might be a way to preserve that. That creates the interesting challenge of then you're locked into your marketing automation vendor.
That's true. And so that then again, it sort of goes back to the business requirements of what is the question we're trying to answer. So if the only thing you care about is website visits, then relying on a different system other than Google Analytics might be fine. I would first make sure that they're sort of a one-to-one in terms of the data you have now versus the data you're going to get instead. and make sure that it's a data set that you're comfortable with. But if it's more in depth, if you need those attribution models, if you need, to know source medium and the marketing automation system you have doesn't provide that information for some reason, then that might not be the right choice for you. So it always goes back to what are the questions that you're trying to answer with the data versus I just need to have a system in place because everybody has a system in place, when they have a website. Make sure you have the right system in place. Google Analytics might not be the system that you need anymore, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, is that it's not a foregone conclusion that everyone in the marketing world uses Google Analytics. There are advantages to using a well-known system. It's easier to find talent. And, the talent may be cheaper because there's more candidates, but it is not the only game in town. And so part of the requirements can be, is this the time to make a change?
hmm And if it is, so let's say, Chris, you decide for your website after 15 years, Google Analytics isn't the thing anymore, and you want to move to a system like Adobe Analytics. That's great. However, it's not enough to just make the decision. You need a whole migration plan to say, these are the metrics that you still have to do those requirements gathering. These are the metrics that I care about. These are the questions that I want to answer. Here's how I answer them currently in Google Analytics. Here's how I'm going to answer them moving forward in this different system in Adobe Analytics or Matomo or something else. And so you still need to do that requirements. And then, if you are staying with Google Analytics, you had mentioned, Chris, that all of the Data Studio dashboards are going to break. Well, having a good understanding of what that looks like and how to test to make sure that things are working correctly when you reset them up. So you need to be putting plans in place, migration plans, test plans, training plans. It sounds like a lot, and it is, but if you start now, it's very doable.
What do you do about stakeholders and things who are, shall we say, prone to procrastination? Like, oh, we don't have anything in the budget for this year, so you have to
Mhm.
wait till 2022, or 2023, I should say. And so, it is March 18th of 2022. If somebody says, yeah, the soonest we can get you budget to do anything is January of next year, and you have till July, what do you do about those folks? Do you just say, I'm going to go update my LinkedIn profile because this company's doomed?
That's one option. Um, However, the more likely option is to, you know, do that risk assessment, play out the scenarios. And so helping the decision maker understand which decision you need them to make today and why. So, Chris, let's say I came to you and said, hey, Google just made this announcement. We need to upgrade to Google Analytics 4. And you say, sorry, kid, I don't have time to do that until March of 2023. It's now incumbent upon me to say, all right, Chris, I hear what you're saying. I need this to be a higher priority. Here's why. And then you start to list out sort of the different scenarios. If we don't do this until March of 2023, here is all the data we could potentially lose. Here is all the money it's going to cost us to expedite this for 3 months ahead of the deadline. Here, if we do this now, here's the cost savings. Here are the resources that we could get. Here's the data integrity that we could achieve. And so really helping them understand the full picture versus just the urgent, we need to do this now where there's no budget. Okay, bye. Like that's a terrible conversation, but usually how it goes.
So if you need supporting evidence for this for your stakeholders, you can tell them that the analytics firm Trust Insight says that in 2023, prices for Google Analytics migrations will be double what they are this year. So just to help you out.
Well, and that's the old, supply and demand. And so people who procrastinate and wait until the last minute for anything end up paying more money than if they had planned ahead and done it before they became long lines of people who got on board to say, "Oh, I also need to do this." And so what'll end up happening is if you start to wait until January, February, March, April of 2023, firms like Trust Insights who do this kind of work will be completely booked up, and then you'll say, but I need it now. Great. You have to add an extra zero to expedite it. Sorry. But that's exactly it, Chris. It's going to cost a heck of a lot more money. to find the talent, to find the resources, to find the support, to find the agencies. And waiting that long doesn't necessarily mean that Google is going to roll out any free resources either.
Exactly. I think probably on our to-do list is we should be looking at writing code for exporting to a system like Matomo, so that as part of our migration, we can help people out that way. But
Mhm.
it sounds like we need to get the people sorted out as quickly as possible, because there's the part that always takes the longest. And if we can do that, then the rest of the pieces should fall into place in a straightforward, if not easy way.
That's exactly it. So, as we're recording this episode, it is mid-March of 2022. So we have a good 15 months before this, gloom and doom deadline ticker clock, runs out. This is a great time to start finding those contractors, to start finding those agencies, to start finding those people on your team who have the skills and getting them ready for Google Analytics 4 now ahead of that deadline. The sooner the better. Because again, the longer you wait, the more expensive resources are going to become.
If you can get them at all.
If you
Ask
can,
anybody who wanted to make sourdough bread in April of 2020 how well that worked out.
well, and even now, ahead of the announcement, finding reasonably priced resources, contractors who were skilled up in this arena was still pretty difficult because they're very much in demand. And now that Google has made the official announcement, it's going to become even more difficult. Prices are going to skyrocket. People will be demanding, more money. And again, I don't know if we can emphasize this enough. The longer you wait, the more expensive it's going to be, and the longer you then will have to wait in line for someone to become available to do this work for you.
Exactly. So, as you have for all things in the past, for GDPR, for CCPA, for getting sourdough, for getting wheat flour during the pandemic, whatever the deadline is, it's coming. Google has made it clear, has drawn a line in the sand. It's going to happen. Please do not wait. Whether or not you engage us, whether you not engage an outside agency at all, please do not wait. Get ahead of it. You will save yourself so much time, so much stress. You will, and your stomach lining will thank you. If
Mhm.
you've got comments or questions about Google Analytics 4 or any analytics, pop on over to our free Slack group. Go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers, where we're answering these questions right now at a very high volume. But you and your 2,200 other marketers are asking and answering questions for each other all day long. And wherever it is that you watch or listen to this episode of the show, if there's a place you'd rather get it, go to trustinsights.ai/TI podcast, and you can get the show on most other platforms. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.